and good afternoon once again. Welcome to my living room. My name is Guthrie Thomas. I'm a guitar player and songwriter, among other things. And I've gotten quite a few emails recently since I started this lesson thing a month ago. When am I going to get to the 12 string? So I thought I'd take a break from the 6 string and spend a little time on the 12 string, although I had not planned on getting to it for several weeks, and just go over a few of the basics on the 12 string. There's not really anything any different than the 6 string than the 12 string, other than it's got 6 more strings, obviously. The 2 bottom strings are unison strings, the 1 and the 2 string, and then your 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th strings are octave strings. Now the hardest part about the 12 string guitar is tuning them. They can be quite tedious to tune, and that's to get them in exactly the same tuning that they have to be in, and especially when you're recording. And 12 strings do go out of tune a little bit easier than 6 strings, only because some of the strings are so thin, and especially the octave strings. And they can go out of tune if you have a not so hot 12 string. Now 12 strings, there's a big myth going around the world and halfway across the universe that 12 strings are harder to play than 6 strings. Now that's not necessarily true. Just because there's 6 more strings doesn't make it any harder to play, and that your fingers hurt more if you play a 12 string, and that's not true either. If your action's high, it doesn't matter what guitar you're playing, your fingers are going to get sore. And the way to solve that problem is to get your action lower on your guitars, or use a capo. Now one of the tricks of 12 strings, and it just so happens that the very first guitar I ever picked up and learned on was a 12 string. I did not pick up a 6 string for a couple of years after I learned how to play a 12 string. So the 12 string is what I learned first, so it actually made the 6 string a little easier to play when I could finally afford a 6 string. Now, if you have a 12 string that the action is kind of high, and the action is determined from the face of the fingerboard up to the bottom of one of your strings, and how that distance between those 2 points is what determines your action. Of course, the higher and the further apart those 2 points are, the worse your action is and the harder it's going to be able to play. So one little trick that we used to do back when we were kids, when I learned, is we didn't have very good instruments, of course. The guitars back then weren't quite as good as they are today. And what we would do is we would take a pencil and a strong rubber band, or a couple of rubber bands, and we would put it across the 2nd fret right down the middle, right about there, and rubber band it. And we didn't care about scratching the guitars and all that, because they weren't very good guitars to begin with. And that's called capoing the guitar up to the 2nd fret. And that would in fact lower the action of your 12 string, and it still does. A lot of the 12 strings that you purchase today are not set up correctly action-wise, even when they're store-bought, and often they have to be worked on to get the action really low. And to solve that problem, to make your 12 string a little bit easier to play, this right here is a Kaiser Capo. It just, you open it up, put it on right there. It looks a little strange, but it actually is a pretty good capo. I use them. And that will lower the action, and as well as raise your key. So you put this anywhere and you'll raise your key. But if you put it on the 2nd fret, it will lower the action a certain degree and make your guitar a little bit easier to play. Another thing that I use is this stuff called fingeries. This is not a commercial. I don't get paid by these people. But this is good stuff. It's just a silicone spray. You spray it on the neck on your fingerboard, and I actually spray it on my my right hand on my fingernails. And this allows easier playing and for sliding up and down the neck. Now you can't hear that right now, and I know, and my finger's pressing down on this fingerboard. And that's one of the purposes of this stuff, is it makes it easier to play. Of course, if there's less friction, then your fingers aren't going to get quite as sore. But a more important role that it plays, especially is in recording, because you eliminate a good portion of string noise from sliding up and down from fret to fret. And with these highly sensitive microphones, when you're recording CDs, such that I do, that can be a real problem. So you want to reduce that string noise as much as possible. And those are two little tricks that you can try to make your 12-string playing a little bit more pleasant. And now a lot of people play the 12 strings by strumming it. And there's nothing wrong with that. They sound great. I have a flat pick right here. I generally don't strum guitars. I flat pick bluegrass, high-fast flat picking, basically on the 6th string. Very few people flat pick 12 strings. And the strumming is just fanned. It's just... The 12 strings are great for strumming. They make really good full sounds. In fact, Gordon Lightfoot uses them all the time. The wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald was recorded with a 12 string and one of the great songs of all time. And I enjoy playing with them. Of course, if you record everything with a 12 string, it gets kind of old. But those extra 6 strings really do add to whatever it is you're working on, be it an instrumental or a personal song or even a national CD that's coming out. So if you know what to listen for, you'll hear a 12 string occasionally, even on some of the best songs. Now, finger picking a 12 string is a little bit more tricky than a 6 string, obviously, because of the 6 more strings. So you really want, when you try to finger pick, the actual style and the pull-offs and the roll-ons and the slides and the bends, everything is the same in open D tuning, which this guitar is, as a 6 string. It's just you have to play a little bit lighter on the right hand, and you're going to have to press just a little bit harder on the left hand, but certainly not enough to break the neck on the guitar. And finger picking is quite an experience once you kind of can separate all of the strings and not just hitting both strings at the same time. Now, that's quite simple. You can do exactly the same thing on a 6 string. 6 string is not going to sound as full. You've got some more strings to deal with, obviously. And when you're playing a 12 string, you don't want to get to playing too fast because there's so many wonderful notes that people aren't going to be able to catch when you're performing. That I try to play the 12 string generally on slower stuff that way. And plus, it's easier to play if you're playing slower stuff. But give your audience the opportunity to enjoy the marvelous instrument that it is by allowing them to hear all the notes. You know, as I said before, playing too fast takes away often out of the performance more than it adds. So that's really all I can say about a 12 string as just an introduction. There's nothing fantastically difficult about them. It's the same as a 6 string. All the lessons and rules apply that do on a 6 string. My advice is to play a little bit softer on the right hand, and you just press a little bit harder on the left. But we're talking such minuscule amounts that it's hardly noticeable. So I hope this will help you a little bit. We'll get more into the 12 string and strumming it and doing back strumming a little bit later down the road when I actually get into the 12 string. I just thought we'd do a little 12 string introduction today just to get people started. So good luck, got lots of fun. Thanks for dropping by. Till next time. Have a great time and keep practicing. Thanks again.